Hey folks, David Stewart here. I've had a couple of requests to give like my top 5 or my top 10 favorite books or favorite movies, and I'd really like to deliver on that request, and I will sort of with movies today. But it's really hard to pick 5 or 10 of my favorite anything, especially with albums, but definitely with movies, definitely with books. Picking just 5 is hard. So I'm going to give you 5 of my favorites, not my top 5 favorites at all. And I'll probably add to this list with other videos as I go. These are 5 movies that I think are really great, are worth knowing about, are worth watching. And if you haven't seen them, go see them because I am giving them my recommendation, and I'll give a short little snippet about each one. The first one that I want to talk about is Ronin. This is a movie directed by John Frankenheimer from 1998. It is my favorite spy movie, I suppose. And the reason it's my favorite is that it doesn't doesn't insult your intelligence along the way. You get this idea that the spies in this movie are the real deal. These are professionals. These are adults. There's never an idea. It's like the antithesis of James Bond. James Bond has like these gadgets and these ridiculous situations. These are really down-to-earth guys working with real equipment. They're experts at what they do. Some of the equipment is high-tech, but it's not high-tech beyond what was available at the time of the movie. And they use that high-tech stuff in ways that are very appropriate and realistic. So if you want a realistic spy movie, Ronin is definitely it. It has a great cast. Jean Reno and Robert De Niro are the 2 leads. They are fantastic in this movie. It takes place in France for the most part. In fact, I think it takes place entirely in France. And the plot centers around this group of basically ex-spies being hired to acquire this case that we don't really know what's inside of it. We never actually find out. But through that process, you actually start to uncover layers and layers about motivations for the individual characters. Things are not quite as they seem. And what I really love about the way John Frankenheimer does this movie is he doesn't insult your intelligence by telling you exactly what's happening. He shows what's happening through the story, and then you're able to draw the conclusions from there. And the final conclusions of the movie are quite good. There's a reveal that is done subtly rather than like, oh my God, this is what's really going on. It's like you realize at the end, oh, okay, so that's what was going on. I understand now, and that really makes sense, and it really makes me respect and love the characters more. This movie is full of some of my favorite movie quotes, although I think this movie is a little bit more of a sleeper as far as great movies than some of the other ones I'll talk about. But it has some of the best quotes, some of the best dialogue. The screenplay is fantastic. It's just good on every single level, and it has some of the best cinematography that I've ever seen in a movie. John Frankenheimer, of course, did Grand Prix, and he takes some of those camera mounts on the cars and puts them in the car chases in this movie. This is probably, I'm going to say it's my favorite movie as far as car chases go. If you want to see the best car chase scenes that have been filmed, I think Ronin has those. And there are other good car chase scenes, but Ronin's are just, they're a mile above all of its competitors. They're a mile above anything else. They're great. The quotes, these are some of my favorite quotes. How did you know there was going to be an ambush in the tunnel? It's my favorite quote. Whenever there is any doubt, there is no doubt. Meaning like trust your instincts. That's the first thing they teach you, and the response is, who taught you? I forgot. That's the second thing they teach you. So there's always this idea that there's layers of these people that they're not really willing to reveal, but we don't need to know all the layers because they're the ones executing the story, and we're getting to know them a little piece at a time as they slowly reveal who they really are and what their real motivations are. So very fantastic movie. Highly recommended if you have not seen Ronin. Obviously great cast. Sean Bean is in it. You got Jonathan Pryce. You've got Robert De Niro, Jean Reno, all these great people. Stellan Skarsgård, who has made some great movies since then as well. Next one I'll talk about is might be my favorite movie, but it's hard to pick a favorite. This is definitely one of my favorites. It's Heat, another Robert De Niro movie. This is a movie with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, and famously has the first scene in cinema where the two are actually in the same scene talking to one another, and it's a very famous cinema scene and very powerful scene. What I love about Heat is that Heat is a movie about tragic characters. All the characters have very specific motivations. Every person has a code that they are trying to follow for their own aims and their own sort of ethics, so to speak. They have their own code of honor or dishonor, and they're following that to the end. And their flaws along the way are causing them both ruin and success. Their philosophies causing them success, and their flaws are causing them ruin. So Robert De Niro is the bad guy. He's the robber. He's not really the bad guy. He's one of the protagonists. You do kind of root for him. He's the robber. Al Pacino's the cop. It's a cops and robbers movie, but it's the best cops and robbers movie as far as I'm concerned. Al Pacino's tragic flaw is kind of the same as Robert De Niro's, and we sort of get that when they come into this scene, that they are driven to do what they do. Robert De Niro says, I do what I do, try to take down scores. You do what you do, try to stop guys like me. That they both are completely focused on sort of their purpose in life, the robber and the cop. And they're so focused on that. Famously, Robert De Niro always says, and this is where the title of the movie comes from, if you want to make moves on the street, make no attachments, have nothing in your life you cannot walk out on in 30 seconds flat when you feel the heat around the corner. And he follows that philosophy to the end with one exception, and that one exception ultimately becomes his downfall in a way. And Al Pacino's philosophy is he is bent on stopping the bad guys, and he says, if it's between you and some guy, I've met you now in this scene, but if it's between you and some guy whose wife you're going to make a widow, brother, you are going down. I am going to kill you. And they both, in this scene, they set up the conditions for how they are going to have to fight and kill each other, and that's exactly what happens. The plot ends up pushing them back together at the end of the movie. They have a face-off, and it has a great, thrilling conclusion. Shot at LAX, which I used to live right next to LAX, so it's definitely a cool scene for me because I used to drive by where they shot the scene every single day, pretty much. So definitely one of my favorite movies. I highly, highly recommend Heat. The other characters in the movie are also very, very good. You have a character who is essentially saved by having the opposite philosophy of Robert De Niro. All the characters' philosophies have an impact on what they end up doing. You have a character who ends up getting killed because of his philosophy. You have a character who ends up getting killed because he's unable to continue forward with his path and his trajectory. It's a really good movie about characters, their struggles, and the plot is driven forward by character actions, which is exactly what you want in a movie like this. Let's keep going here. Next one, number 3, Alien. 1979's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. And Heat, by the way, Heat is directed by Michael Mann, also one of my favorite directors. So Ridley Scott did Alien. Alien was a really, really important movie, but I think if we just look at it as a movie on its own, it is absolutely great. It's one of my favorite movies, and it's probably my favorite horror movie. It's got the sci-fi horror element, which I really, really appreciate. What makes Alien great is not just Ridley Scott's directing. The biggest part of, I think, what makes Alien so creepy and sort of stay with us is the design by H.R. Geiger. H.R. Geiger designed the monsters and a lot of the sets in this, and this is his aesthetic. And you can see there's so many details in the set. There's so many details in what's going on. There's everything looks like it's made out of bones, which is part of Geiger's self-created aesthetic, and it is very effective in this case because it feels frightening, it feels dark, it feels scary. We never quite figure out the story behind this alien ship that they land in at the beginning of the movie, and that's good. Leaving a little bit of mystery behind, I think, can be a good thing, because the story doesn't center around what this is. The story centers around the struggle of the characters once they take the alien into the ship. Now, contrasted with that are also these bright white set pieces. Still lots of details. I feel like you don't get quite as many of these cool details in modern sets. I don't know why, but they just don't seem to show up. It feels very futuristic, very clean. And then there are parts of the ship that are very dark and dank and wet. And so there's this big contrast between the bright, shiny future and the dark, gritty future. There's more darker, kind of hyper detailed sets, like the inside of Mother, who's sort of the computer. It's a very, very good movie. It's very effective at the sort of the scary element, the high tension, I'm waiting for something to jump out at me, sort of feeling that you get when you are waiting for the monster to attack. And I think the reason that the movie is effective, part of the reason it's effective at least, is because of the limitations of when it's made. In 1979, we didn't have CGI or anything like that. The monster, if you were to just see it, wouldn't be as scary as you seeing parts of it. So in the original Alien, all throughout the movie, you don't even really get to see a good full version of the alien, a semi-full version of the alien, until the very last scene. But you see his arm, you see this tongue like pop out, and it's extremely frightening. But that's because the alien was a puppet, and if you were to show the whole alien, the illusion would be unmasked, and it wouldn't be as effective. What is effective about the tension element is you're giving the audience, and Ridley Scott's really excellent at this in this movie, you're giving the audience a piece. You're giving them a hand, you're giving them the tongue, you're giving them a piece of what the monster is. And the audience's imagination fills in the details with whatever is most horrific to them. This is an extremely good device, and it's something that we've lost a lot in horror. I highly recommend watching Alien if you've never watched it, for its technical reasons, for its script, for its sets, for its flow and plot. It's just a really, really good movie. So let's move on to one that honestly should not have turned out as good as it did turn out, which is Apocalypse Now. This is a Francis Ford Coppola movie. Most people would probably say The Godfather is his better movie. And there's several Francis Ford Coppola movies that I think are sort of sleeper amazing movies, and I'll talk about them some other time. But Apocalypse Now was had a terrible production schedule. They didn't know what the ending was going to be when they started production. It's based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, by the way, kind of set in Vietnam, which I think works really well. But somehow they managed to make the movie, and it ended up being great. Very, very mysterious how it ended up being great, but it is. It's a really good movie. What I love about Apocalypse Now is that you are starting sort of in the regular world. And as the movie goes on, you get deeper and deeper and deeper into madness. Things get darker and darker. And I don't just mean metaphorically darker. They get metaphorically darker. They get literally darker, to where most of the scenes are happening at night or in fog. You can't see things. There's like this fog of war that it becomes literal towards the end of the movie. There are two versions of this movie, by the way. There is the Redux version and the original version, and I like both for different reasons. I'm going to say this might be controversial, but I'm going to say I like the Redux version a little bit better. And the reason is because the trip into the Heart of Darkness is longer and makes you feel like you are journeying more into madness. I feel like with the theatrical cut, you go from like the regular world and then you're in this insane world, versus the Redux version, you're slowly being immersed into madness, so that at the end, the main character, who's played by Martin Sheen, and who is revealed to be the sort of antagonist of Colonel Kurtz, Marlon Brando, you realize that they're not very different, that they are sort of embracing wickedness to a certain extent to achieve their aims, and and there's a very powerful scene at the end about it too. So I do like all those versions. Like, it's worth watching if you've never watched Apocalypse Now. It is truly like a journey into darkness. You get darker and darker till the whole movie is insanely dark. Definitely recommend it. Let's move on to the fifth one. This one is completely different. That's right. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This is probably my favorite comedy movie of all time. It continues to work years and years after it was produced, years after I first saw it. Monty Python and the Holy Grail is a movie about knights pursuing the Holy Grail, but really it's a collection of scenes. It's a collection of scenes loosely tied together by a central story idea, the quest for the Holy Grail. why should that work as a movie? Well, it works as a movie because it's funny. And people really forget that comedy movies need to have comedy in them. Most comedy movies that come out today are so focused on getting the Blake Snyder save the cat plot elements in so that the studio will make the movie, that there's just no comedy left in the story and there's no comedy left in any of the scenes. Monty Python really focuses first on the jokes, first on the comedy, doesn't even really care about the story that much, and it makes for a much better movie. It makes for a movie that holds up. Each scene is about the comedy of that particular place in time, and or that particular scene, whatever situation they've conjured up. Every scene's about the comedy of that situation. You're not creating a bunch of dialogue that's intended to serve some larger plot point, some larger beat sheet. You're not doing any of that. You're just having funniness from beginning to end, and that's what I want to see in a comedy. I think the randomness of the scenes makes the comedy work better. I think when you make the viewer a little bit off guard, when you kind of they don't know what to expect, I think that gives you a better opportunity for comedy to take place. Now, I first watched this, years ago when I was a teenager, and me and my friends really loved it. And for good reason. It's full of the most quotable comedy in the history of man, probably. And we love to quote it. But there was something that we didn't like, and that was the ending. Because at the end, there's no ending to the story. What happens is the modern cops come and round up all of the knights. And you're like, that's so bizarre. Why on earth did they do that? And then the movie just ends. Well, now as an adult, I love the ending. And the reason is because it turns the entire concept of the movie on its head. And it's set up in a scene where, like, you have this historian talking, and a knight comes by and slashes his neck, and out comes all this great blood, and it's quite funny. And you realize at the end that these are a bunch of loonies dressed up as knights doing a historical reenactment in modern England. And none of it was real, and it was all just them playing and being stupid. That there was never a fourth wall. Like, they were breaking it the whole time. And so now I really like the ending. It's absurd and shocking, and makes, I think, the movie work so much better. This is a movie that I do not believe could be made in 2016 for the reasons that I said. Because it doesn't have this Blake Snyder save the cat beat sheet. It doesn't have this plot that's totally unified. The scenes are not serving the plot. The scenes are serving the comedy of the scene. But you know what? That's what makes it good. I will say that's what makes it good. You do not need a great story and comedy for a comedy to work. You just need comedy. And I think this is proof of that. If you've never seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, I don't know what rock you've been living under, but you should crawl out of it and go find a DVD of it and put it in and watch it and laugh. And if you don't laugh, well, you can come and call me a jerkin or an arsehole or whatever you want to call me. And at least you say, I've watched Monty Python and I don't know what the hype is about. So thank you so much for watching. Those are 5 of my favorite movies. And I hope there are some of your favorite movies too. Please let me know what movies you really like, because if I haven't seen it, I probably need to see it. The movies that really stay with us are the movies that need to become part of, like, the canon of greatness. And I want to know what those movies are. And for me to talk about favorite movies, notice I didn't talk about any movies that were released in the last couple of years. And it's not because I haven't seen them. I've watched less movies the last couple of years than I have in previous years, for a bunch of reasons. But I think movies have to kind of stick around in your psyche for a while before you can really call them favorites, right? I couldn't really call Winter Sun's first album like a favorite album until I'd listened to it for over a year. Then I was like, yes, this is one of my favorite albums. So I think the enjoyment of it has to really persist for a while. So please let me know what you think about it. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to visit my websites, davidvstewart.com, dbspress.com. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a great, great day.